In actual fact, what it is a northerner first. If you can't get a northerner, then we take an expatriate like yourself on contract. If we can't, then we can employ another Nigerian, but on contract too. This is going to be permanent, I should say, as far as I can foresee.
Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sardauna of Sokoto and Premier of the Northern Nigeria, was actually a big figure in the politics of post-independence Nigeria. His assassination on January 15, 1966 during Nigeria's first military intervention was an unfortunate chapter in the country's history and would trigger a chain of events that ended up in the Nigerian Civil War. This story dwells on what happened 24 hours before his assassination on January 15, the circumstances surrounding his death, and the dramatic consequences that transformed Nigeria's political destiny. But before I point my searchlight into his last 24 hours, let me first of all examine the political climate in the country leading up to his unfortunate assassination. Hello and welcome to this edition of Hispo Media. My name is Gabriel Adidia. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. Before the January 15, 1966 military coup, Nigeria was gripped by deep political instability, regional rivalry, and widespread corruption. The country, barely 6 years into independence from Britain, operated under a parliamentary system dominated by three major regional parties: the Northern People's Congress (NPC) in the north, the National Council of Nigerian Citizens (NCNC) in the east, and the Action Group (AG) in the west. Tensions escalated in the western region following a bitter power struggle within the AG, which led to widespread violence known as Operation Weti. This lawlessness and arson tarnished the legitimacy of civil governance and created a sense of ineffectiveness. Also, allegations of vote rigging and manipulation during the 1964 federal elections and the 1965 Western Region elections further fueled public discontent. Ethnic division, especially between the Hausa Fulani, Igbos and Yoruba groups, hardened, and the federal government was seen as ineffectual in curbing the growing chaos. Meanwhile, the military, which had remained apolitical since independence, grew increasingly frustrated with the failure of the politicians. These conditions set the stage for a group of young military officers to plan a coup aimed at overhauling the political system. But before we continue with the story, let me invite you to take a moment to like this video, and if you are among those who have not subscribed to this channel yet, kindly take a moment to hit the subscribe button below and on the bell notification so you will not miss any of our future uploads. So let's get back to the story. The coup was orchestrated by a group of young military officers, including Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu, who was tasked with leading operations in the northern region. In the weeks leading up to the coup, Nzeogwu initiated a military exercise named Operation Damisa, or known in English as Operation Tiger, under the guise of training soldiers in new fighting techniques. This exercise was in reality a cover for mobilizing troops for the planned coup. The plotters aimed to eliminate key political figures and seize control of the regional capitals: Kaduna in the north, Ibadan in the west, Lagos at the federal level, and Enugu in the east. Many analysts have, however, held the view that the Igbo-led plotters had no plan to carry out the coup in Igbo land. But this has been disputed by some of the coup plotters, most notably Major Adewale Ademoyega in his revealing memoir, Why We Struck. Their stated objective was to end corruption, mismanagement, and tribalism in the Nigerian government. Still, what remains more puzzling is what happened just days before the coup. Coincidentally, or perhaps prophetically, just days before the coup, Sir Ahmadu Bello made a pilgrimage to Mecca, seeking spiritual strength at the Kaaba. There, an incident occurred that some later interpreted as a troubling omen. Of course, Kaaba is considered the holiest site of the Islamic faith. He wanted to enter into the sanctum of the Kaaba, but was not able to be admitted. He returned home in high spirit, though not affected by his inability to enter the Kaaba. On the 14th of January 1966, a day before the coup, Amadu Bello received information that his counterpart in the Western region, Chief Samuel Ladoke Akintola, has scheduled to visit him in Kaduna. What is he coming to do? Is it a Salah visit? He may have wondered to himself. He also received a phone call from the Prime Minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. After some discussion with the Prime Minister on the phone, it was time for the Premier to receive some briefing from his staff. The Premier beckoned on Idris Gidado, his personal secretary, to inquire how much money he owed to the stores where they normally make purchases and had accounts. Idris obliged the Premier with this information and the money was released. Some of the stores at the time, according to Idris Gidado, included Kingsway and Bodgson's. After that was handled, it was time to visit his new official office. At around 12 noon, the Premier summoned Idris Gidado again, this time along with his ADC, Aliyu Kangiwa, and asked them to visit the new office. The three of them went on the visit. It was more or less an inspection tour of the facility. After the tour, Sir Ahmadu Bello was generally contented with the work done. Meanwhile, he had been informed earlier that the Premier of the Western region, Chief Samuel Ladoke Akintola, was scheduled to visit him in Kaduna. However, his arrival was expected in some later hours. Amadu Bello decided to detail one of his senior ministers to receive Akintola at the airport whenever he arrived. After this arrangement was concluded, he decided to go to the mosque for Friday prayers. All these were happening during the Ramadan season. By 3 p.m., the Premier of the West had arrived in Kaduna. In his entourage was the Deputy Premier, Chief Remi Fani Kayode, and some other senior ministers. From the airport, the guest headed for Usman Hassan Katsina's house in Kawo. You need to be informed that this place was meant to serve as the Sardauna's new official residence and his new office. But it turns out this visit was not an ordinary one, neither was it a Salah visit. When Akintola finally met the Sardauna of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello, he claimed to have come to see the Premier to inquire about his knowledge of the army's impending takeover of the government the following day. The Sardauna claimed that although he was aware of it, he has left everything in the hands of God. But Akintola came with a plan. And what was this plan, you may ask? He wanted them to take refuge abroad. Akintola at that point claimed he had arrived with a plane so they could travel to neighboring Niger, where his best friend was the president at the time. But the Northern Premier rejected this plan. He claimed that those calling for the removal of the government were not the ones who put the government in place to begin with. He questioned the rationale behind any coup plot. Accordingly, he declared, and I quote, "I won't leave my people in their hour of need to run away and take shelter somewhere else." He was adamant and showed some bravery. At that point, Bello was said to have told Akintola to return to his people and advise them to plan for a fight. Chief Ladoke Akintola probably accepted the Premier's advice and went back to Ibadan. But the question is, was that the right thing to do, or would they have told the line of President Nnamdi Azikiwe, who went on a health cruise and could not return till after the coup? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. In the meantime, when Akintola departed for Ibadan, it was too late for Bello to go for his favorite game of 5, Idris claimed. He then decided to take a tour of the GRA and Kaduna South before Iftar, the time when the Ramadan fast is broken. According to Idris Gidado, and I quote, "We entered one of those long cars with a seat facing one another Alhaji Ali Kwabai Ali Sarakin Mota, the chief driver for the Sardauna, was in control of the wheel. I sat facing him as he sat with his friends. The driver was just driving around and he later arrived home just in time for the breaking of the fast, he concluded. Later that evening, the stage was set for some entertainment at the Sardauna's residence. The popular musician Musa Dan Kwairo had come to entertain the premier after the break of the day's fast. By 10:30 p.m., the popular singer was still singing. Meanwhile, about an hour later, by 11:30 p.m., as the premier was still being entertained, Brigadier Samuel Ademulegun, commanding officer 1st Brigade Kaduna, Commissioner of Police MD Yusuf, and Alhaji Ali Akilu arrived and went straight to the office to see the premier. Their visit appeared sudden and unscheduled. Immediately the premier sighted them, he left the music occasion and went straight to meet them. After about 30 minutes meeting, the trio departed. Of course, Alhaji Ali Akilu was a secretary to the Northern Regional Government at the time. When the premier returned, Dan Kwairo was still performing, but he decided to end the performance. Thereafter, he headed upstairs to write his Salah message for the next morning and prepare for his early morning flight to Sokoto. In the meantime, they had no idea that soldiers had already positioned themselves around the premier's compound. Hardly had Idris left the Sardauna's residence when the soldiers struck. But while Idris was leaving the Sardauna's residence, he noticed Haruna Musa, the principal secretary security detail and the then acting commissioner of police, walking towards the premier's home. Shortly after, he heard sirens from the premier's home and thought it was a normal routine check on the alarm bells. When Nzeogwu and his soldiers stormed the premier's home, they gathered everyone at home together in search for the Sardauna. Idris is quoted as saying, "All the premier's wives, staff members, and wards were brought out and instructed to take seat on the floor by Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu. When Nzeogwu himself demanded to know who Amadu Bello was, a resident of the home who resembled the late premier but wasn't as tall, came out and said he was the one. But they knew he wasn't the one, despite his outward declaration to the contrary. The soldiers threatened to shoot everyone if they were not told who Amadu Bello was in the group. The premier, who was among them, got up and said, 'I am the one you are looking for. I am the premier of the northern region,' prompting his three wives to come to his side, distraught. This is what became his last recorded words before his assassination. When the soldiers were about to kill the Sardauna, two of the wives stood up, leaving the first wife, Hafsatu Bello, who said, 'If they must kill him, then they must kill them together.' He was shot along with his wife, Hafsatu, as they embraced each other. But who was Sir Ahmadu Bello and why has his death cost Nigeria so much? Well, Amadu Bello, born on June 12, 1910 in the village of Raba, Sokoto State, Nigeria, was a scion of the revered Sokoto Caliphate. His lineage is traced directly to Usman Dan Fodio, the founder of the Caliphate, making Bello a great-grandson of Sultan Muhammad and a grandson of Sultan Abubakar Atiku. His father, Ibrahim Bello, held the title of Sarkin Raba and district head of Raba. His early education was rooted in Islamic teachings. At around 5 years old, he and his siblings studied under Malam Garba, the Imam of Raba. They learned the Quran and Arabic language. At that time, they wrote on wooden slate with red pens, immersing themselves in the religious and cultural traditions of their heritage. In 1917, Bello enrolled in Sokoto Provincial School, the only modern school in the province at the time. He later attended Katsina Teachers Training College, now Barewa College, where he excelled academically and in extracurricular activities. During his time in the school, he served as school prefect and cricket captain. He graduated in 1931 and returned to Sokoto to teach at his alma mater, the Sokoto Middle School. Bello's administrative career began in 1934 when he was appointed the district head of Rabba. In 1938, he was promoted to divisional head of Coups and became a member of the Sultan's Council. Although he made an unsuccessful bid for the Sultanate in 1938, he was conferred the honorary title of Sardauna of Sokoto and elevated within the Sokoto Native Authority Council. In 1948, Bello received scholarship to study local government administration in England, broadening his understanding of governance. Upon his return to Nigeria, he became increasingly involved in politics, co-founding the Northern People's Congress (NPC) and serving as its President General. He was elected to the Northern House of Assembly in 1952 and became the first Premier of Northern Nigeria in 1954, a position he held until his assassination in 1966. The murder of Sir Ahmadu Bello and others during the coup led to the collapse of the First Republic and the suspension of the Nigerian Constitution. Major General Johnson Thomas Aguironsi, the highest-ranking military officer at the time, assumed power and established the Supreme Military Council. Many Northerners perceived the coup as an Igbo-led conspiracy, given that most of the coup plotters were of Igbo ethnicity, and the majority of those who were killed were from the north and the western region. This perception aggravated ethnic tensions and led to retaliatory attacks against Igbos in the north and ultimately led to the Nigerian Civil War. For our story on what happened in the last 24 hours of Chief Bola Ige's life, please click the video displayed here. For more on the last 24 hours of General Sani Abacha, please click the one displayed here. Don't forget to like this video and book the subscribe button below if you have not done so already. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.